What am I wearing? Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We got a very quick one here for you today, but you do see me wearing some merchandise, so you know what that means. Merch time! We've got the Earl Grey Pour-Up shirt, which looks nice in bright blue, with of course the Earl Grey Pour-Up logo on it. We do of course have the Ketwolski standard black with the logo in the corner. And of course we have the beautifully done up design here drawn by Triangulum Studios of me wearing my mock outfit where I was mocking Doomcock, where I refer to myself as Disaster Dong. All of these shirts will be available on mixtees.com. Check the description and my pinned comment down below if you're interested in purchasing some of these awesome merchandise items. It does help support the channel, which I do prefer over things like Patreon, because at least in this regard, you're actually getting something tangible for you to get out of your supportment of the channel for a monetary piece there. So I appreciate anybody who's going to go ahead and get some of the merchandise. I hope that you guys enjoy it. I will say that the shirts themselves are very high quality. I really enjoy them very much. And I will say that this is a medium. I like to buy medium shirts, but this one is a slimmer fit. So if you like your shirts to be a bit bigger, I would go with the large or maybe even the extra large, kind of going upwards from there. So that way you know that they actually are going to fit correctly. And you can kind of do the drying and washing piece to kind of shrink them up a little bit. And just so that you do know that it's not just shirts that are available. These three designs come in hoodies, sweatshirts, tank tops, women's shirts, all the above. They're all available and sized appropriately based off of whatever one you kind of order and whatever type of material you're getting for the particular item. So go out there and enjoy that. I hope that you guys and gals do enjoy it. If you have any questions about that, throw your stuff up down below and hopefully I'll be able to facilitate any kind of purchase situations or issues you might run into. So thank you guys for those of you who go out there and support the channel. I really appreciate it. Okay, so we've got two stories to get into today. Obviously the big one being the announcement of Star Trek 4, and the other kind of big one is some of the panels that were released in regards to the Star Trek Picard Countdown comic. Now, I will say before we get into the Picard Countdown comic stuff that this might include some spoiler level discussion because they are releasing full panels and pages of the Countdown comic, which is a set about a year before the Picard show takes place. So it's going to include, I guess you could say, some information that may spoil the plot of the show for you. So if you're not interested in that, I will put a timestamp down, below right now in the video so that you guys can go ahead and skip into the Star Trek 4 discussion. Okay, so with these panels, I covered this in a P2 video just the other day, but obviously the big thing that we're kind of experiencing is the revelation that the Enterprise F and or E may be kind of making an appearance. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, the Enterprise F did make its, debut inside of the MMORPG Star Trek Online, where it is an Odyssey-class vessel, and it has involved with many, many missions and all that stuff like that. And we get to utilize it, in different missions as a, partner and stuff like that, as an NPC character and stuff. So it's very much involved with that game, but it is an Odyssey-class vessel. We don't really see the Enterprise E there. And the little model on Geordi's desk inside of his command position at Utopia Planitia shipyards, you see the Enterprise E model and what appears to be the Odyssey-class Enterprise F model kind of facing each other. And then we cut to a sequence where we see Admiral Picard standing on what is, in my opinion, clear as day, the Odyssey-class bridge that you see inside of Star Trek Online. Here are the two side-by-side comparisons. In my opinion, that is very clearly the Odyssey-class bridge. Now, the only thing here that's a little bit tricksy is that in the Star Trek Online timeline, the Odyssey-class vessels have not been commissioned yet. They're not really in the fleet. Now, two things with that is either the Picard writers are just utilizing the bridge for a different style ship, which is very much possible, and it could just be there kind of like as a little Easter egg and kind of paying homage to the hard work that those folks did over at Star Trek Online, designing all those really cool bridges. Or they could be just accelerating the timeline of the Odyssey-class vessels. So depending on how they're kind of going about that will, in my mind, kind of depict whether or not we're going to see the Enterprise F or the Enterprise E inside of the Picard Countdown comic, and maybe even the Picard show. The final panel that I actually just got a hold of today does involve a conversation with Picard talking to Geordi about, number one, a rescue Armada fleet heading to Romulus, number two, the Romulan supernova that is still potentially about a year out, or they don't even know exactly when. They're racing against a clock that they can't see, and then three, they mentioned the captain of the Enterprise. So again, that means that the Enterprise something is still out there. Now, My gut feeling is that they're confirming for us, the fans, that the Enterprise E is still in action. It'd be about 23-ish years old at that particular point, but it could have easily been, retrofitted and, gone through a whole new shakedown period and kind of kept upgraded, with time. Remember, it was a Sovereign class vessel, if I remember correctly, and that was kind of the cream of the crop for, First Contact, Nemesis style, time frame there. So it's very possible they kept that ship kind of moving on. Starfleet has historically been known to kind of keep ships for decades and decades and decades. I mean, we saw that in all the different iterations of Trek. Obviously, that was to save up on model budget, but obviously that is something that is well within universe for them to keep a ship that long in the fleet. So I think that we're going to see the Enterprise E. I think if the Odyssey class vessel's in play, it'll be what we see, Picard standing on, which is the USS Verity, which is Verity. I know there was some confusion about the spelling there, but the USS Verity, that may just be an Odyssey Light or maybe a new Odyssey model. Perhaps it's like a brand new thing that they're testing out the Odyssey class with. But I think that that's what it's going to be over there, and I think the Enterprise E will still be in action underneath an unnamed captain. They didn't say in the panels who the captain's going to be, but they did make a joke about saying that captain's not going to want to give up the seat so easily. So I think it's probably going to be a TNG alumni, possibly Worf kind of comes to mind. Geordi would have been my first guess, but Geordi's obviously at Utopia Planitia, and then we know that Picard's off doing his own thing. Riker and Deanna are off on the Titan, and Data's obviously still dead, so the only other person in my mind would be Worf, unless they're going to pull like a fast one and maybe they put Wesley in charge if they continued that story thread from Nemesis where it looks like he came back to Starfleet. That's possible, but obviously there's so many theories kind of abound right now. We're not quite sure what to expect at all, but I'm very, very excited to see how this whole comic first issue kind of plays out and what it kind of shows us of what's going on inside of the Prime universe with Star Trek. Okay, so the next big story we're going to talk about is obviously Star Trek 4, and that is in terms of 4A, as I called it in my P2 video, because there obviously already was a Star Trek 4.
There'll be whales here.
But now we're looking at Star Trek 4 in the Kelvin universe, and that, for those of you guys who don't know, that started off in Star Trek 2009, then we had Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond. I think it was in 2015, 2016, and then it kind of went dead because Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth basically priced themselves out of budget for Paramount at that time. With the script they were writing was trying to bring Chris Hemsworth back, but obviously now he's widely known as Thor, so his costs went through the roof. Chris Pine's costs goes through the roof, so they weren't able to settle on a budget for their salary costs, so the project kind of fell through, and then the whole Quentin Tarantino project kind of was being rumored around, which I was never putting too much stock in it. I wanted to talk about it a lot because I think it'd be fun to see what he had to do, but I don't think he's actually going to make a Star Trek film, but maybe that's just my personal opinion. I don't know. So I don't really think the Quentin Tarantino thing is going to ever get off the ground, so now all of attention has kind of shifted focus a little bit onto Star Trek 4 now. Now, they do have a new director attached to it. There's no real storylines potentially kind of being pitched, but I assume there's at least some kind of treatment being shopped around internally between, Paramount and Bad Robot, and also I guess now CBS too because of the merger. So there's obviously some kind of story treatment kind of being involved there, but I'm excited to see how they're going to bring these characters back. And really, people are saying like, well, they should just forget the Kelvin universe. They should just move on and do something different or whatever it is. But honestly, with the full steam ahead that CBS and really now Viacom and Paramount are all kind of pushing for, which is to directly challenge Star Wars' ability to maintain content on all different types of platforms and types of mediums, I don't think that they really have the option to go any other direction than back to the Kelvin universe. Starting up a whole new film franchise with all new characters is very risky, and I don't think they're going to want to do that. Picard kind of had the opportunity to do that, but I think that they did the right thing by making it a series because it was also very risky. People may not have turned out just to see Patrick Stewart back as Picard in a film. I think that that's wrong, but maybe their own internal kind of, I guess, collective demographic information told them that that wasn't going to work right, and so they're pushed it off to the series. And I have theorized that Pike might become a movie, perhaps a streaming movie, but in terms of a theatrical release, they don't really have much of a choice, I think. the Kelvin universe at least has some connections. People still kind of remember that. People definitely know who Chris Pine is as an actor. People, if they get Hemsworth back, people know who Chris Hemsworth is. So I think they may try to bump up their star power and connect things back to a film series that is now a decade old, which is kind of crazy to think about, but that came out 10 years ago now. I think they may try to kind of capitalize that a little bit, and it's kind of all they've got. And I'm okay with that. I think that my personal opinion is that this is going to be their last film of the Kelvin universe, and they're going to kind of wrap up the Kelvin universe and maybe either close the loop. I think that was the original plan for Star Trek 4 with Hemsworth being there. They were going to close the Kelvin timeline loop and put everything back into the Prime universe and basically put everything back to the way it was. I still think that they could do that and kind of just, kind of crescendo this whole, Kelvin universe film series and just lead it right into a whole new film series after that. But I think coming out of the gate, they're probably looking for a box office slam dunk, and the best way to do that is to at least bank on some of the nostalgia and audience connection that they built up with the Kelvin universe. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into the rumor rundown. So there are no real rumors today to talk about, which is great. I would say all of the rumor-mongering channels have entirely shifted their focus into Star Wars because Star Wars has The Mandalorian out right now and Rise of Skywalker is getting ready to come out next month. So everybody's super focused and lasered in on, Star Wars. I think that, we'll probably see a resurgence of different issues regarding Star Trek coming in February, which is, probably, right after Picard starts to get announced and they'll start doing their reviews. And hopefully the show's very good and hopefully everybody really likes it. And hopefully the show doesn't get attacked all that much and we don't have to really deal with it. But that's good, though. No rumor news to report for right now. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into the Trek Trivia question of the week. Okay, so congratulations to those of you who got the trivia question right last week. The question was, in case you guys don't remember, was which race developed warp drive first? Now, I'm not trying to trick you by trying to play a fast one with the difference between warp drives and singularity drives, because there is some kind of discrepancy between whether the Vulcans had singularities or warp drives or whatever it is. So the answer is the Vulcans, and that is the correct answer based off of what we know chronologically right now within Star Trek. There was a weird episode inside of Deep Space Nine with Quark saying, when they went back to Earth back in, I think, 1947 or something like that, where they went back to Earth, and they were like, if we take the warp drive technology and bring it to the Ferengi homeworld right now, then they'll have it before the, Klingons, the Vulcans, and Andorians, and everybody else. But that doesn't fit in timeline-wise with the rest of Star Trek. I know they went on record, some of the creators in Deep Space Nine, saying, well, we weren't referring to warp drive, we were referring to faster than light travel is different than warp drive, and Cochrane made warp drive, and I find that excuse kind of weak. In my mind, the answer is clearly the Vulcans. They developed it in the 9th century BC. 9th century BC, so way ahead of everybody else, and so that was the answer. So good job. I think quite a few of you got that answer right. I think the answer was pretty obvious, but those are the kind of little caveats as to why it was the Vulcans was the right answer. Okay, so the Trek Trivia question for this week is very simply, what killed Captain Kirk's brother? It's a very simple answer. I think that most of you guys will get it. It's kind of a softball one, but kind of going full throttle through with the loops here, back to the original series trivia questions. So good luck to all of you who are trying to get the answer correctly. Hopefully you guys and gals do. I will, of course, heart the answers in a few days leading up into the next Earl Grey to give everybody an opportunity to kind of get their answers in before I spoil it for everyone. So good luck. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into the comment of the week. This week's comment comes from user SilverBullet1620, and it says, this looks pretty cool. I don't like how they are overriding the Countdown comic series, but the story looks good. That uniform looks like a modified Sierra uniform now that I look at it. So, right, Silver Bullets, I did talk a little bit about the uniform situation when they released the still of Picard, Admiral Picard's Starfleet uniform. I think it was at Destination Star Trek this year. It was the first time we actually got to see it in person, and a lot of people were like, oh, that uniform looks terrible, Well, I said before that uniforms, when they're not on set or inside of some kind of context and actually on a person, that they look weird. I think that goes for not just Star Trek, but really any film costume. When they're separated from reality of what you're going to be seeing in the context of the frame, that they look kind of weird. They just look kind of weird sometimes. And I think it's just what it is. I think it's just our minds don't really register it correctly when we see this visual image of this uniform, and it's not really connected to what it's supposed to be. But I would say that even in this comic, everybody's wearing a style of uniform that we saw that Picard, you know, the Admiral uniform for Picard. Everyone seems to be wearing that. Geordi seems to be wearing that. The different background, you know, Starfleet characters are wearing a similar style to that, which is still different than the uniform that we saw in the Picard trailer. So it looks like the uniforms were like this a year before the Picard trailer, and things still continued to change. But I think that even in the comic, it looks really cool, and I think it looks even better than it did in the stills that we saw of the actual physical uniform being, you know, made up that they had there. So I think it was great. I can't wait to see it, hopefully on screen. I would imagine it's going to be on screen at some point since they actually bothered to stitch it, and it looks like they made it for, you know, Patrick Stewart's body type, so hopefully we'll actually get to see it. But I agree that the other Countdown comics were fun, but I think that we need to zero in and focus on this current set of Countdown comics and get the Picard series off the ground. I think it was bound to happen once a new creative team kind of got the reins here and continued the Star Trek story post Nemesis. But it is unfortunate those comics are kind of sliding it back, way back into the back of Beta canon, even Charlie canon, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I am excited to see what the story is. So, Silver Bullet, thank you for your comment. I do appreciate it. All right, that wraps up today's Earl Grey pour-up. I hope that you guys and gals enjoyed it. Remember that the merch store link will be down below for you guys to get access to, and anybody who goes out there and buys a shirt or a sweatshirt or whatever it is, I do absolutely appreciate it 100%. Again, I feel like this is a better transaction. If you were looking to support the channel, this seems to be a better way in my opinion, because again, at least you get something cool to wear, to actually have that's tangible, and you get to support the channel. So I appreciate anyone who's going out there to do that. I will be, of course, wearing the different shirts, you know, throughout my videos now, so that I'll continue to help advertise those, so keep that in mind. So what do you guys think about Star Trek 4? Are you excited to see Chris Pine return and the rest of the Kelvin crew? Do you think this is going to be the last one, or do you think they're going to be kicking off a whole new trilogy, perhaps? Also, what do you think is happening with the Enterprise? Do you think it's going to be the E or the F? My gut's still on the E, but I'm curious to hear what you guys and gals think about that. So get those comments down below, and I'll go ahead and catch all of you guys next time. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!